Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us here at Chit Chat with Char, where our mission is to connect, collaborate, and cultivate. I am so excited to get to chat with Jeffrey Shirley this morning. Jeffrey Shirley is with Service First Mortgage. I've had the pleasure and opportunity of meeting him within the last year. And I am just excited to have him here today to share with us a little bit about what he's doing, what he has going on in his life, and things of that nature. So without further ado, let's welcome Mr. Jeffrey Shirley.
Hey, hey, hey.
Hey, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing amazing.
Yeah? Yeah.
Yeah.
What's going on these days? Tell us a little bit about you, and then we'll get right into it.
Well, these days, working hard, obviously trying to help people do some loans, get some dreams to come true for people, especially, those first time home buyers out there that are like, can I do this? Is it a possibility? And helping them to say, look, this is something that you can do. So every day is a journey in and of itself because it's about it's about almost being a guide to people to get them from point A to point B and seeing that thing come true and being at that closing table and it's like we made it, here we are, this is it. You didn't know if you could do this, but look at us now. And so it's just a beautiful thing to be a part of.
That is awesome. So, you mentioned first-time home buyers in this market right now. For first-time home buyers, what advice would you give to a first-time home buyer in this market?
Right. I would say uh, I try to be very thorough because it's complicated, right? Like this market is very much in the seller's favor right now, and so some things that sometimes a person might have heard before or things that might have worked in previous times is like, look, just let me help you, and I'm going to kind of bring you all the way through this thing. Let's start at the beginning, and let's go through. Here's here's kind of what it looks like to get a loan. Here's what actually getting a loan really entails. It's not just your down payment. There's these other things that are involved. And here's kind of what's popular right now in the market and really just kind of going through that whole scenario so they feel like, look, I had this understanding, but now I have a better understanding. Now I'm clear about how can we position ourselves the most effectively because I'm not the real estate agent, right? So from my end, I want to do everything I can to help them to mentally be prepared for the fact of like, hey, it's a little tough out there, but at the same token, if we do these right things, we're going to get everything ready here, and then you'll be able to get there. And it's sometimes I tell people it's about keeping your fishing line in the water. You know what I mean? It's like, look, you can't catch a fish if you don't cast out there. And yeah, sometimes you don't catch a fish immediately, and you got to just keep fishing. You got to keep going, and you'll get it. And so, for my end, it's a lot about positivity. It's a lot about just saying, look, here's how we're going to do that. It's a little less with the people that have bought in homes before, because they kind of understand the process a little bit. But
Right.
um, yeah, I feel like with the first time home buyer, it's I wouldn't say hand holding, but it's a little bit like, look, I'm going to kind of carry you through this so that you feel comfortable and not feel like, oh, what is going on? I'm going to help you to say, look, here's our next steps. And I think that's
Right.
really important.
Right. That is important. And this market is something else. So
Mhm.
that's extremely important. So you talked a little bit about your background beforehand, and you shared that you had background in insurance. You were a door-to-door salesperson at one point in time. Tell us a little bit about that and your
Charmaine,
journey to getting
you're
here.
digging deep here, right? Okay,
Of
look.
course.
So yeah, I mean it was an interesting deal. When I was in high school, I didn't necessarily think about college as much as some other people might have. I said, I'm gonna go make money, it's gonna be get money, right? That was kind of my first thoughts. And so I got the opportunity to go do door-to-door sales, and they said, hey, we'll give you an apartment. Of course I had roommates, but like we'll furnish the apartment. I was still 17. I turned 18 in May, like right after I graduated, right? I still had braces on my teeth. I was as wet behind the ears as it comes. And so it was in Oklahoma City and got out there and God, it taught me a lot about myself. I never really pictured myself because I just had high school jobs before that. So I never really was in a sales role or learned those parts of yourself that you learn when you get out here and kind of try
Right.
to explain something, right? And say, here's my product. would you like to buy it, or whatever it
Right.
was. And so I will be honest with you, it was about 2 weeks. And I don't forget that because we used to go out Monday through Saturday. I think we would go about 3 o'clock till 9 o'clock every day, knocking doors in these neighborhoods. And the guy that was kind of training me, he went out and maybe like an hour, and he's like, "Hey, you're not going to make any money watching me." He's like, "Let's just split up and go." And I was like, "Okay." And so there I went, and now I'm just kind of by myself. And it was funny because I would get people to listen to me, and I was like, "Man, these people, they're giving me their time of day." You have that feeling, right? You're like, "Look, they're answering the door. They're not just like shoving the door in my face. They're giving me some time of day. But how do I sell them? Like, how do I actually get them to buy this thing?" And
Right.
so that's why I say it took about 2 weeks. And God bless me. God sent me somebody who was just about to call pest control sales is what I was doing.
Okay.
Just about to call a pest control company. And so he's a mailman. I never forget it. And his garage was open. And I just seen him there. I said, "Hey man, how's it going?" And I'm 2 weeks into this. So I'm starting to feel a lot of feelings of failure. I have like, can I do this? Because I'm commissioned, right? I made $0 so far. And so it's, you're there every day, hours, hours, hours. So I was starting to feel like, man, is this even possible for me? And then this guy's like, "Hey, I was just about to call one of your companies. What do you have for me?" I just told him what it was. And then he signed up, and I was like, "Man, this is possible." And then I kind of learned about, when you run out of things to say, why don't you just schedule a time, right? Like you're like, you can only talk about bugs and things like that for so much. So the next thing is like, okay, so what date works for you, right? It was kind of that transition of like when you ran out of things to talk about, really your next thing is, I don't want to say close, but it's to close, right?
Yeah.
Like
Right.
now ask for the business. So that really taught me a lot about sales, asking for the business, that transitioned into all my other jobs, to where you're expecting it to work out. You're expecting this thing. Like it's not a hard sell or anything like that. It's just like, this is natural. You want to do business with me. I'm going to be honest with you. We're going to give you a good product. And so for me, that transition from door-to-door sales to insurance, to I sold cars for a little while, very short amount of time. But to me, it doesn't really matter the product, in my opinion. It's all about the presentation, right? It's all about, hey,
Right.
this is what we're going to do. Here's how we're going to help you. And we're going to assume that we're going to do business together. Otherwise, why would we be talking?
Right.
I heard this guy on this one podcast talking about at a car dealership. And he's like, if a person tells you, "Oh no, I'm just looking," right? And they try to stop you, you're going to do this, "Oh, I'm just looking." And then he's like, so a lot of people just walk away, right? But he's like, looking for what, right? Looking for a car, right? You're looking for a car, SUV. Like, that's your opening right there. You are there looking. You are potentially going to buy a car. That's not a no. That's
Right.
just, I'm not sure yet, right? And so
Right.
I don't
Right.
know.
I think that's really good. So you said two things that I really want to talk about. So one thing that you mentioned, you said ask for the business. For whatever reason, I think for some people that is the hardest thing to do, because you expect that if you're presenting something that you don't need to necessarily ask for the business, right? If
Yeah,
I'm
like they're going to
presenting
jump out to
something,
you.
yeah. So I'm presenting you with something, and the next move is for the customer to say, "Yes, I want this."
Right.
But you have to ask for the business. And I
100%.
think for me, I learned that early in my real estate career, because truly that was the first like real sales job. I think we're all in sales in some form or fashion, no matter what we do. But the first real sales job that I've had has been real estate. And one of the things that I had to learn was I needed to ask for the business. And that's it. It took me some time to figure that out, but you have to ask. Some people don't even realize that they need something until you ask the question.
Yeah, I think that's the game changer for me, was that 2 weeks, right? Because these people were listening to me, but I was not asking for the business.
Yeah.
And I was the same thing. I'm subconsciously, I'm sure I was thinking that, like, why are they not telling me they want to sign up? Well, why am I not saying when's a good time for you? You know what I mean? Like, what's so hard about that? And it's like, you just rip the Band-Aid. You just got to try
Right.
it. What's the worst they're going to say? No.
No. And if they say no, then it's okay. Thank
Yeah,
you.
but
And
you
on
leave
to the
less
next door.
confused. You leave a lot less confused because otherwise you're scratching your head like, why didn't they buy from me? Well, maybe because you didn't ask them to buy from you. You just
Yeah.
gave them information and then you move down the road. Like we have to say, hey, is this something that you want to do? And there's different modes, like at the car dealership, it was very different there too, because compared to insurance, insurance was something like, hey, you need this. This is obviously we need to sign up for this. Let's just find the right fit for you and then let's go forward. You're still assuming the sale, but with
Right.
cars it was a little bit more where you've got all these old school thoughts about, I'm going to haggle with you, I'm going to play all these games, and I'm not like that. I don't play games with anybody. I give you my honest thing up front. If it's good for you, cool. If not, cool. It is what it is, and I leave it up to that person. And so a lot of that was also just having that internal peace about that. Is just saying, hey, what do you think? Do you want to do this? And then you don't say anything else. And then you let them
Right.
tell you yes or no. And a small percentage of the time they might say no, but a large percent of the time they're going to say, okay, let's do it.
If it's
Because
something that they need,
it's
right.
something that they need. And I guess, yeah, we think that we need to haggle. Some of us feel like, oh, we got to go out here and break this person down. It's like, that's for somebody else. That's not for me. Like
Right.
my service is worth what it is. This is a good deal. If you like in that situation with the cars, I said, look, if you want to go look on a website and go see, what these cars are going for, we have good prices. This is not, it's not unreasonable, but we're not going to sit here and nickel and dime over, over $50, like
Right.
either you want it or you don't. And so it was really peaceful in that sense, because you learn about yourself and like, hey, I don't have to like emotionally beat myself down to get to the goal. Like people will buy it without you going through all that, because there's two sides, right? Like this is our job. So if you let it, it can really beat you down every day. And you're not having peace about your work because you're not maybe sure about your value.
Right.
I
Oh,
think. What do you think about that?
I think a lot about that. So having a sense of worth and value, I think that comes with time. I think that comes with being who you are. I think that comes with experience. I think that knowing your worth and value comes with confidence within yourself, confidence in the ability to do whatever it is that you're doing. Um, and I think that a lot of us have to overcome understanding our worth and our value for whatever reason. It may be, background. It may be your family construct, what you've been raised and brought into. So that, I mean, we could really go deep with that one. Knowing your
Yeah.
worth and your value and being able to present that in a way that people understand that, they respect that, and then they're going to trust you for that because you believe in your worth and in your value.
And I think for some people, I guess what you're, kind of what you're alluding to is like maybe they're not sure, but at the same time, you got to realize that there's a lot of different customers out there, and there's going to be some clients that they're going to give it a shot, right? They're going to say, hey, will you do this for less? Will you cut your commissions down? Will
Of
you? And
course.
it's no skin off their back to ask you, but you've got to say, hey, it's also no skin off my back to say, no, this is my fee. This is the price. This is what it is. And be okay with that. You don't have to give a 30-minute answer. It's just simple. No,
Right.
this is what it is. And I think whatever, and just move on. I think it's really simple, because when you start to try to justify it in so many ways, then it creates the doubt, like it's just, this is our charge. This is what it is. We're going to give you great service. On to the next subject. Like
Right.
we're not going to beat this to death. And I think that's my mother. We haven't got to this yet. She's a real estate agent. And so,
Yes. Love Miss
I,
Chavez.
what'd you say?
I said, I love Miss Chavez.
I know. She's she's a pretty impressive woman.
Amazing.
Yeah, she's awesome. And so I've had the privilege of, I would say mentored, but it's my mother, right? Like I'm an observer, right? I've been watching her my whole life and seeing what this woman became as she became a real estate agent, and how she's, been the strong agent that she has been. But one time I was in a meeting, and it came up about that, like, oh, about cutting your commission, and should you do that? And she said, well, I don't normally speak up in a lot of the meetings, but I don't believe in that, because it's one of those things where who am I as a person? This is what I'm worth. And if you start to do those cuts and commissions, well, this is a referral based business. And so now you're going to be in there as, hey, I'm the 1% agent over here. And the thing is like, I always think, obviously I wouldn't ever be rude to a customer, but I think to myself, does anyone come to your job and tell you to do your job for less money? Like, how would you take that? Right. These are industry norms. If I was being exuberant or whatever the word is there, like if I was being crazy about my fees, that would be one thing. But if this is all within the norms, then we have to be okay saying, look, this is what I'm worth. And certainly there are circumstances when you do things that are different, but to become known as this, it's like 33% less or 60% less a commission. That's crazy, to me. Like I would say, even if I took 5% less, that's a lot,
Just, it is. It is. And going back to your point, this is a referral based business. So that's what you're going to be known as, the discount realtor. And you have to set the stage for who you are. And I think that goes right back to what you were saying about knowing your worth and knowing your value and knowing what you bring to the table. When you made that statement that, we don't go to your job asking you for a discount, it made me think about Starbucks. The prices are ridiculous for a cup of coffee, right? Yeah. But that does not stop us from getting in line and waiting 10 minutes to get that cup of coffee. And when we get to the cashier, we don't say, can you discount this? This is a little bit too much for this coffee.
Right.
We happily pay it and we move on. There's no question about it, but they've set up their brand in that way. What question are you going to have?
Yeah. Char, I want to jump in real quick if you guys don't mind, because I love what Jeffrey's saying, Char, what you're saying. And one of the classes that I was teaching years ago in Adapt was about discounting, because I agree with both of you. And I want to give you a scenario, and I want to get y'all's thoughts on this, because I don't think very many people think about this. If Jeffrey is a discount real estate agent or discount whatever business that you're in, you're known as the discount person, right? You're gonna, if you're a realtor, rather than 3%, you're gonna do it for 2, or you're gonna do it for 1.5, and you're gonna work on volume.
Right.
What happens if a very financially stable real estate agent comes into your market and sees you and goes, okay, Char, you're doing it for 2, so I'm going to do it for 1 3/4. Right? I can afford to take the hit right now. And here's what I'm getting at. If I do that, that means you're going to have to drop to 1.5 to remain that discount option, right? And then I'm going to drop to 1 1/4 or to 1. And I'm going to keep dropping until I put you out of business, because you can't afford to do what I can do. And then once you're out of business, I can raise my fees again, because no one's in that territory. And I have seen that happen. I have seen it subtly happen. And I got into a pretty good debate with a guy one time. He goes, that's not going to happen. That people aren't that way. I'm like, okay, well, guess what happened to him? He got put out of business through the same type of, right. Yeah. Right. So, I mean, you can't keep, if your whole sales pitch is I'm cheaper than everybody else, sooner or later, you're going to be out of business, because someone's going to test that, and you're going to have to keep dropping and keep dropping and keep dropping. And either quality is going to suffer, or you're going to be out of business at some point.
That's true.
Certainly quality. Certainly there's margins, right? There's profit margins. We got to make money. The company needs to make some kind of money to stay in business. So
right.
You cut things here, you cut things there, you're going to lose. You have to, it's the old school thing. You pay for what you get, and we're not going to say overpay. You don't necessarily have to overpay, but there's only so far that when it comes in, it's like, wow, this is so ridiculously cheap. Well, what did you get? Something probably less than what the other person did. Your experience was not as good, or all these types of things that we try to do that's really the difference maker, that takes the pressure off the person. Where, especially in my job as a loan officer in the mortgage business, you hear about some companies, 3 months or whatever to try to close something. It's like, man, that's ridiculous to me. Like, why would anything take that long to be able to do the job? Why is it? Or these people that go to like a big company and they can't even get back to the same person. Like, this is why you want to do business with me, is because you're going to have my cell phone. My cell phone number is ringing across the bottom of the screen right now. That is my actual number. So you want to reach me, call me, text me, email me, and we're going to talk and we're going to figure this thing out. We're not going to just pass it on to the next customer service agent and say, oh, well, that problem's gone, got him off the phone. And I used to, we didn't talk about my insurance life, but in the insurance world, that's kind of the way that I work there, is that company did that kind of stuff. A lot of those people didn't take ownership of the clients. And I used to tell them, just ask for me, just call back. You can ask directly for me. That is allowed. Because for me, it's a lot simpler because, number one, obviously I want the enrollment, I want the sale. And so some people didn't care about that, but that was important to me. And then two, we're already so far down the road with your situation. Why would I want this person to have to start over? What kind of customer service is that? And at that company, my bonuses and things, a lot of that was heavily weighted on the surveys, you know? And so that's how I maintained that high. Basically, they wanted no less than a 4.85. I mean, you could get like, this is out of 5 stars. So basically a couple fours, you're going to be losing money. So you needed 5s every time. And so for me, some people didn't think that was feasible. No, that's where I'm going to stay. And you can't force somebody. I'm not there doing the survey with them, but it's all the things that you do that create that, right? Like, if you're a survey person or not a survey person, that's the difference, right? But if you are a survey person, then it says, okay, I'm going to do this survey. How would I rate this person? And you can't leave it to chance, in my opinion. You can't just give someone, you're like, oh, I hope they don't do a survey. Well, that's not the way we want to do business. You know what I mean? Like, we're going to do business and like do a survey. I want all my people to do a survey because it's the truth. It's how I do business. And then your word, like I use Yelp a lot, you know, for restaurants and stuff. I know not everybody believes in that, but I'm like, look, if 500 people gave this thing almost a 5-star, maybe I want to check this place out.
Exactly. So there's a couple of things floating through my mind. So we talked about the reviews and asking for that. I know that early in my career, that was a hard thing for me to do, to ask for reviews. And I guess part of the reason is you have the mindset, again, if I'm coming to you presenting you with something, then yes, tell me you want it. You tell me you want it. And then the other thing with a review, if I did a good job, it should be instantaneous that you give a review, give a good review. But for some reason, if we don't ask the question, will you give me a review, or pose that to our clients, sometimes they will not do it. And it's an expectation, but we have to ask. And the other point, and we can come back to that, the other point that you made was about building those relationships. I think no matter what business we have, no matter what we do, everything is based on relationships and how we make people feel. The platform here at The Difference and with Chit Chat with Char is based on relationships. It's solely based on relationships, the way we treat people, the way we make people feel when they're around us. And when they leave our presence, they know that we've made an impact on their life. And I think that we lose that sometimes because we're trying to have a certain number of units. We are trying to get to the dollar. And then we lose that relationship building opportunity. But that's where the business comes from, is building those relationships and having meaningful relationships with people.
I would say, just to keep it brief with you a little bit on it, I would say, think about this business. This is a property purchasing and selling business. This is a big deal. This isn't, I went to XYZ clothing store and bought a shirt. How was my service? Like, this is a major transaction. And so if anything, this would be a perfect place to give the best customer service. If anything, this is the difference maker because it's so emotional for certain clients, right? It's even if it's not like outwardly emotional, this is like, hey, I'm about to spend a lot of money on this thing. I'm about to commit to a very big purchase here, or whatever it is, or I'm trusting you to help me sell this property. Whatever the case is, this is a major transaction. And so that review to me it's almost like a no-brainer. Like, if anybody earned a review, it would be somebody that's dealing something that's so major in a person's life,
Right.
versus like, you call somewhere, oh, give me a review. It's like, well, was a 30-second call. I don't, maybe it's worth a review. You did a great job, simple, but at the same time, like, what's the weight of the situation? The weight of this situation is
It's
big,
heavy. Yeah.
So, and it's their life, and it's just so many things. So I think that you're right. It should be so easy for us to say, hey, if you don't mind, would you just, go on here? I'll send you the link again and just give me a review whenever you have a chance. You don't have to coach anybody what to say, because everything that they're going to say is already done. Like, your work has already presented itself, but some people just are not review people. So it's okay to ask them, just to say, hey, if you don't mind, it just really helps my business, just to, leave a couple thoughts for me. I don't know. And I think instinctually, a lot of people do the reviews in this. Like, I think I have pretty good success rate with getting reviews afterwards, but I think it's no big deal. Just ask them, because why not? This is such a big transaction. It's not like, why would I do a review? This was, a $20 thing. No, you just spent $500,000 or more, right? Like, this is not a joke, So if you're going to give good business and you want referrals, you're going to trust me with such a big transaction. I want to also show other people, hey, look at my work. This is the reason why we should do business together, because other people are telling you that I'm going to do good for you.
Absolutely.
Earn that trust, right? Because a lot of times I've never met a customer in person, right? I work with realtors. Realtors give me a referral. I talk with that person a lot of times, especially in this COVID day and age. I don't meet them in face-to-face, right? And so this is one of those things where I have to immediately convey some trust. I have to immediately convey something. You can't just get on the phone and say, hey, trust me.
Right.
It has to be something more than that, right? There has to be a tonality to your voice. There has to be information, a confidence, something that's going to put them at ease, that says, hey, I can trust this guy. We're going to do business together, and he's going to help me reach this goal. And that's what it's all about. Like, for us, this is our jobs, right? This is what we do every day. We do lots of transactions throughout the year, but for this person, this is the only house that they're buying this year, right? This is a very big deal, especially if it's a primary residence, or, like we talked about at the beginning, first-time home buyer.
Right.
Goodness, it's like jumping off a cliff into the water, right? Like, everybody says you're going to be fine, but it sure looks scary.
And it feels scary. It's stressful. It's all of that. So you made a point about not necessarily seeing all of your clients, all of the clients that you have to, that you're doing business with. That is huge. And when you said that, I kind of thought about, wow, this is the largest transaction or investment for a lot of people, right? It's one of the most important things that, some people will do in their life, is purchase a home, and then they don't see you. So that goes back to having a meaningful relationship with the person that referred them to you.
Oh yeah.
So it just goes back to relationships, because that your customer, which is the realtor's customer, trust you because of their relationship with that realtor.
100%. They would never talk. There would be no reason for us to be in business if it wasn't for that, right? And so that goes both ways, is because I need the business from the real estate agent. That's where I work with, right? So we all serve each other in some way, but at the same time, my service has to kick in too, right? It's not just me receiving. It's like, okay, this real estate agent is saying, hey, I have this potential buyer here. Let's get them to the goal. And how are we going to do that? So this means that if I trust you with this person, that's also their money, right? This is the agent doesn't make money if I can't help that person close on a loan. So you have to have this strong foundation of, hey, call Jeffrey. He's going to help you. He's one of the best out there. Whatever it is they're saying, hopefully they're saying all beautiful things about me, but that kind of thing. And then boom, it's showtime. Get on the phone. It's like, hey, what they said is actually true.
Right. That is awesome. So building those relationships, you've been in the industry for a little bit now. How does what you're doing currently compare to the jobs you've had before?
It doesn't in the sense of what we talked about a little bit ago. Like, this is such a beautiful thing to be a part of. Mm-hmm. I'm one of those people where if it's at all possible, I'm going to that closing, because it's just a sweet, sweet feeling. And I guess I think back to my first house and being there at the title company. It's just, it's so much, right? You're like, what's there? But I realized that being there, like my loan officer wasn't there, my real estate agent wasn't there. It was just me and the title company, and that's okay. There's not that sometimes it's like that, especially during COVID. Sometimes we didn't have a choice, but
right.
Like I said, when I have the opportunity, they really like you being there. They really like the support, because it's like on a football field, you run 99 yards and then you don't go the last yard to get in the end zone. Let's take it all the way, right? Let's go to the end and shoot. If we can go out afterwards and get a bite to eat or something like that, and let's just have a quick little moment of, look, we did it, man. Like, I can tell you there's times, because it's not always the simplest thing in the world. Everybody's got different situations and things, right? And so sometimes we have to get different information and things like that a person might say, man, I didn't know if we were going to make it or not, right? Like, I've had somebody say that, I didn't know if we were going to get there because we're waiting on this or waiting on some third party for something. And I was like, look at us now. Here we are. Like, isn't this so beautiful, And throughout that whole time, that's what we're doing. At least I feel like that's part of our job as a real estate agent, as a loan officer. We're continually conveying that trust. Like, don't worry, let's just get this document, whatever we need, and that'll get us to where we're trying to go. And you just convey that trust and safety and saying, look, this is not like going and buying a car. It doesn't just take a couple hours. It takes several weeks, sometimes to get to the goal. So it's one of those things where, I guess, going back to your original question, it doesn't compare. Although insurance was important, car sales was cool. Door-to-door sales definitely had its value. All that stuff was pretty good in helping people in some way, but this is their homestead, right? This is my roof. This is where I'm going to potentially build a family. And so I love it. I love being a part of that. It's super, super fulfilling. And so that's why I say I love to be there at closing, because it's like the pinnacle, right? It's like, boom, now it's not about me getting paid, because we do this obviously for a job, but this is about the service, right? This is about, here you are, here's the goal, and now we're at the goal.
Yeah.
Boom. Absolutely. It's just lovely. And you don't even have to say anything a lot of times. It's all there. You know what I mean? It's just, you can feel it in the room. You can feel the excitement there. They're signing so many pieces of paper, and they're like, doesn't even phase them one bit to sign all these pieces of paper, because
they know that they're getting those keys.
Yeah. I mean, it's obviously we understand it because we see the paper all the time, but just thinking back to my first house, probably wasn't paying as much of attention to each one of those documents as what I might have. But the thing is like my mom told me one time, if you want the house, you're going to sign the papers.
Yeah, that's right.
Because there should be nothing there at the closing day that we haven't already discussed, right? Like,
that's true.
Because I handle the loan, right? I'm doing the loan itself. So those are the factors that are probably most important of, hey, what's my down payment? What's my monthly payment? What's my interest rate? All these kinds of things like that should already have been handled. So everything we're doing at the closing table, in my mind, is simply a review and a finalizing of exactly what we've already talked about. And that's good business, in my opinion. I don't think we should be going to the closing table. Oh, what is this? What is that? I mean, certainly there's some things where they'll say, hey, this is a paper that says, look, their lawyers don't represent you. They just filled out the paperwork. There's just stuff in there, right, that you've got to sign that's not really pertinent so much. It's important, but at the same time, it doesn't change your loan terms, or it doesn't necessarily, it's just an explanation of, hey, this person's a part of the transaction, but they didn't necessarily represent you. Okay. That's just extra papers. But in the end of it, was that important for us to discuss ahead of time? Probably not. What does the person care about? What's my monthly payment? How much money do I need to buy this house?
What's my bottom line? And when can I get into my house?
And when can I close? Exactly.
So tell me, how old were you when you purchased your first home?
I was 20.
20.
20.
Wow.
I was a young one.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. So just thinking about that, 20 years old, what led you, because what 20-year-old do you really know that's looking at purchasing a home? So was that Miss Chavez that led you that way, or
you would think so, right? Yeah, you would think.
What was the propelling thing that led you to purchase a home at 20 years old?
I guess. So what happened was I was at this company and had a great manager back then, and his name is Mark Smith, and I haven't talked to Mark in a good little while, but he was for a young person, sometimes you're like, man, you like that guidance, you want that mentor a little bit. Like this guy was a legitimate mentor to me. He was probably 36, 37 at the time. You know what I mean? So he wasn't a very old guy. He's a little bit young guy, but he was sales manager. He was, making really good income. He handled himself well. There was a lot of things I just really liked about it. For some reason, me and him, we just kind of hit it off as friends, that kind of thing. And so one day he's just like, what do you think about buying a house? And I was like, I never thought about that before. And because I'd been there for about a year at the company, and I was like, maybe I will. He's like, look, let me refer you over to this realtor, talk to the realtor. Next thing you know, talk to the loan officer. Of course, my income was already straight. Everything was already handled. This was during Obama's run. So we had the first time home buyer incentives, things like that. And so that, for me, because I'm a kind of finance kind of guy, I'm like, man, I'm about to get $8,000 or whatever it was to buy this house. You got it on your taxes later. You didn't get it on the day of. But anyway, it was one of those things of like, I guess I'm not an overthinker of things sometimes. Sometimes I am. But it was just one of those things like, okay, this makes sense. Let's go for it. And there was a guy at the office, and he was like, the opposite. He was like, oh, your debt to income ratios. And he's breaking down all this stuff like Mr. Know-it-all about all these things. But that really doesn't matter. Like that matters to me as the person doing it. But like as the person buying it, can I get the house or not? That's kind of where it is, right? It's like, I don't need to know exactly how every rule works within your business. I have my own job, And so I think for that was enough for me. And I just went forward and did it. And then after that, I became a landlord. I moved back here to Texas and rented out my house. So that was a whole other experience, is becoming a landlord. That was pretty cool.
That is awesome. That's a great story. A 20-year-old homeowner. Now we're seeing that homeowners younger and younger these days, especially with the millennials and how they operate and how they are changing the platform of our market, not only raising prices, but just the way that they think and the way that they do things is really changing our market. So let's transition a little bit over into some personal stuff. So tell me, what book are you reading right now? Don't get nervous. I see you with that nervous look like, oh my God, where is she going with this?
Look, I had to look around. There's actually nobody here.
I saw you.
Looking around. No, what's kind of funny is, so I told you I just finished it. Well, I finished it a little while ago. It's Relentless. Relentless is a really good book, Tom Grover. But actually, I started another book right now. So there's two books we can talk about. Okay. I'd say Relentless it's a really good book. It's a good book. It's basically this guy that was a personal trainer for Michael Jordan. And so he's kind of tells a story. Michael Jordan was one of his first main clients, that he got. And so obviously that's a big fish to land. But obviously Michael Jordan he grew to who he was, right? At the very beginning, he wasn't quite, the Nike brand and all these things right there. So he kind of caught him at a beginning stage, which is sometimes is good to make a partner before they're huge, before they're a big deal. He might not have got that same chance, maybe, you know, at that point, because obviously Chicago Bulls have a team of trainers and all these other things. But anyway, I thought it was really good in the sense of this mind state of how do we go about business in life? How do we go about things, right? Like, are we just doing it to get by, or he has these things of cleaners and closers and all these different kinds of statuses. And the cleaner is what he describes as like the best situation, right? Like this person is not fazed by issues, or if he is, he transitions and figures out how to come through it. I mean, it's just what you would think of as your top person, right? Or whatever, right? Like going side story on that. One time when I was doing door-to-door sales, I was, I had his roommate, and he's like, I want to challenge you to a race. And so we're in these apartments, apartments have little gyms. They got these treadmills. I'm like, okay. I was not exercising or anything. I was not in any kind of great shape, you know what I mean? By any means, as far as like being prepared to race somebody. And so like, whatever, just going to use the confidence key over here. And so
that's a good one to use, right?
Yeah. So we got on the treadmill, right? And we're running, and like, I am literally dying inside, right? I am dying. I'm out of breath. I can't even, but I just keep this straight face, just running, just straight face. Inside, I'm just completely dying, and then he gave up, right? So ended up winning. And afterwards, he's like, I kept looking at you, and your face, it was just stone cold. And I was thinking to myself, like,
You have no idea what was going on internally.
yeah, but it worked, right? Like sometimes
Right.
that's the way it goes. It's like you can't necessarily show it out here, like, oh, you're about to beat me, because that's the edge that sometimes people need to.
Mm-hmm.
So I tie that into the Relentless book, because that's a lot of what that book is about. It's about doing everything that it takes to be the greatest at your choice. It could be at being the best dad in the world, could be the best husband in the world, best friend in the world, the best coworker in the world. Whatever it is that you're doing, you're going to be relentless at this. This is my commitment. And that's why he uses Michael Jordan, because, I mean, some people would say different, but I think majority of people would say Michael Jordan's the best basketball player of all time.
Right.
And so I would say that 100%. Right. And
Right.
I'm a big basketball guy. So let's say, in all fairness, I wasn't really alive to, see Wilt Chamberlain and some of these other greats before. Bill Russell, right? Like, guy has 11 rings, Bill Russell. So anyway, so sorry to get off on a basketball tangent, but Michael Jordan, overall, you think about all these different levels and what he's created with the Jordan brand, and just who he is as a person, right? Like, it's a really good role model if you're willing to take those steps, because it wasn't without sacrifice to be who Michael Jordan was. And that's why I really like the book, is because it gives you an inside scoop of, like, if you think this is what you want, is this really what you want? And if it is, then maybe these are some ways that can help you. And if it's not, then that's okay too. Just it's like a reality check in some ways of here's an example of somebody who did it on the highest level.
Right.
And then you use that in your own life to say, look, as far as me as a loan officer, right? Like, how do I see myself as that? What am I willing to do to be the best loan officer? Obviously, we don't do anything against the rules, and neither did Michael Jordan, but he practiced morning, night, all the time. In between those finals games, he would fly and go to see his trainer in between there, right? Like, he was having sessions, and it's that level that not everybody's willing to go to be the best.
Yeah, that's a good one. I miss our book clubs. We'll be kicking it back off in 2022. What was the other book that you're reading?
The other book is The High Five Habits. So Mel Robbins. So I got told about this book, and I decided to pick it up. I'm like, let me see what this is all about. Completely different than Relentless, because this is more about self-love. It's more about like, I am good enough. Everybody's, not everybody, I would say majority of people probably have some things that they're hard on themselves about, right? Like, whether it's how they look, or how good they are at their job, or how good of a parent they are, or something, right? And some of it comes from our childhood, all different places, right? I'm not trained in all that, so I don't want to go too far into being the expert, but I just find it really fascinating about that self-talk. And the high five thing is about, I'll use the camera, boom, I'm going to high five myself in the camera, but she's high fiving herself in the mirror in the bathroom.
Yes.
I think this goes for guys too, but it's really good for ladies, I think, a lot, in the sense of, because she talks about being in front of the mirror. And I guess I thought to myself, like, I guess I don't look at myself as much as what I thought I did in the mirror, right? But I know when you guys are getting your makeup on, doing all this kind of stuff, that you're seeing yourself, right? And maybe you're saying, oh, this isn't as good as what I want it to be, or this, that, and the third. And you have to stop and realize, like, man, you are what you think about yourself to some degree. And so I might need to pay attention to my thoughts and actively switch it over and say, you're doing the best you can. You're being the best person you can. You are trying, everything that it is. And we want so many things in life. Sometimes God has plans that take a little bit longer, and that doesn't mean that you want to live life in a defeated mind state. You have to understand, like, hey, even though I'm not to this point there, I still have a really good life. I still have this great house. I still have this great bed to live in. I still have a great car to drive. Yeah, I want a Maserati or whatever, some kind of car, but that's fine. Like, I have a good car now. I have ways to get to where I'm going to go. And then there's other parts in life, right, to where I believe, as far as like taking yourself to the next level in the business world. But I think it kind of has to start mentally with this. It's saying, look, I'm good enough.
Right.
And that's a lot of what the book is about. So I'm really enjoying that. It's very different than the then the
relentless.
relentless. Thank you. Then relentless, but in some ways they all kind of go together.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's needed. I think I might need to check into that book. That sounds really good. So you talked about being the best father. Let's talk about that just a little bit because I commend you. I my heart goes out to you. And so let's talk about that a little bit. I know that you are a single father. Me being a single mother for many, many years before I got married, you know, I know, I see that, I feel that, and we've had some really awesome conversations about your journey as far as you being a single father, and let's talk a little bit about that, whatever you feel comfortable with sharing.
You know, I feel comfortable with sharing everything, in my opinion, just because I mean, it's your life, right? Like there's nothing to be ashamed of with anything, like, so I was married back then. I got married and didn't work, and she ended up leaving, and with me, with our daughter, right? And kind of, you know, I would say, just to put it nicely, kind of checked out a little bit, and was off on other things, but that doesn't matter, right? Like, I believe God has a plan for all of us, and that I had the strength to do what I needed to do. And so, to kind of take it back a little bit, there was a moment when we moved back here. I told you I became a landlord, rented my house out. So moved back here to Texas. And there was a time, because before then, I would say it was the opposite. Like, when my daughter was first born, I could have did better, like I could have done more. I was a young guy, no excuses on that, but I hadn't really committed to being a dad. I was just committed to making money, right? Like, I was committed to being out here and just making money for our family. I thought that was enough, right? I was just going to just bring in all the dough, which I was doing, worked out, right? But on the other side, everything was sacrificed. I had no relationship with my daughter. So anyway, when I came here to Texas, I was in her room one day. She's sitting there playing, she's like 2 years old at the time. And something hit me, and I just said to myself, I'm gonna give my life to you. This is it. I'm everything. You're everything for me. I'm not going to let any of these other distractions be more important than you from this point on, and, put it easily, that was it. Honestly, like, from that moment forward, all my life revolved around her. Later on, wasn't too long later, maybe 6 months later, me and her mom split up, and I became a single parent. And it's like, I guess it helped me because I'd already made that commitment to my daughter, that you're everything to me, that I want to be the best dad I can be for you. And it's interesting because there wasn't anything necessary that happened. It was just a moment where I was like, maybe God hit it on me. I'm not sure, but it was just one of those things where it's like, I'm doing this. I'm going to be the best dad I can be for you. And so from that moment on, that's been my life. Yes, I'm a single parent. Who cares? I don't know. I don't need sympathy for that. Right. Like, yes, it's had challenges. Yes, there's been things that I was 23 years old. Yeah. I mean, there was other people that were doing things at 23, especially as a single person again at 23, and you have these other friends and they're going out, and you can't do it. Right. But it's okay, because what's more important, you still find ways to have fun. And I guess I don't worry too much about any of that, other than the fact of like, man, this kid has changed my life. Like, especially being a daughter, having a daughter, like, I think that it helped me to soften up a little bit, like, to maybe if I had a son, I just don't know if I would have learned as much about love, but she just taught me so much about love, and just through her example of just being a sweet little lady, and just, I don't know, man. And maybe you have to let it change you too. I don't know. I'm not exactly sure how it all happens, but it worked. It worked for me, because now the person I am today, I love the person so much more today than what I was back then. Right. Like, I wasn't so bad of a person there, but like, as far as like, let's say I want to get married again one day and things like that. Well, you have to know how to love somebody, right? Like, how do I love a person if I don't even know how to love at all? I needed to learn how to love. And so this little daughter just kind of taught me like the simplest love. Anytime you have a hard day, any of this stuff, and especially when she was 4 or 5 years old, just, the little baby stages kind of thing.
Right? Innocent. Yeah.
It's like, the words don't even have to be said. I just have to look at you and just see you're just genuine, and it just brings a peace. And so, yeah, I hope that wasn't too long of an answer, but
No, that's it. It's a beautiful answer. Beautiful answer. So
yeah.
you talked about being the best dad. What is your definition of the best dad look like? What does that mean when you say that?
Yeah, let's put it a couple ways. One of the simplest ways is present.
Mm,
That's one of the simplest ways to make an active choice to be present. I'm
yeah.
one of those parents that now before COVID, obviously COVID, they don't let us do this, but back when she's in middle school now, but in elementary, there's a school event, I'm there. If there's an event, I'm there. Yeah, I might lose a couple of dollars, have to take off of work or whatever. Didn't bother me one bit. If there was a field trip, I'm signing up to be on there. Maybe I get picked. It was like a lottery type of situation, but that was to me I'm sure there's other things to be a good parent, but one of the main things is be present,
Yeah.
right? Just be there. And then the other thing is support and love for that person as they are.
Yeah.
Like sometimes we want to live our lives through our kids, or they, I wanted to be a football player, so you become a football player or whatever. Like, these kinds of things. And I can't speak for other parents, but I feel like my daughter is not me, right? She's her own person. And so
Right.
I just want her just to feel love from me, accepted, supported, with expectations. It's not like we don't have expectations. We have, we have a structured life for sure,
Mhm.
but it's not about condemning or you do so bad. It's about like, what do they say? Support. I guess I can't think of the saying, but it's like correction can help some, but like support will help more, right? Like if I say,
Right.
look, this thing that we did, maybe this wasn't the best choice, but maybe if we look at it like this could be a better way to handle it instead of
Right.
like, oh, you're doing so bad, you'll never get it right. So when I think of being the best dad, that's kind of in a nutshell. It's about being present, about being supportive, about giving just love there and then letting life go. And then the rest is how you jive with that person. Like for me and her, a lot of it's adventures, right? We like to go places. So not everybody's going to have those same things on how you connect, but those
Right.
fundamental things, I think if you just kind of do those fundamental things in whatever your style is, it'll work.
Right.
Just my
Right.
opinion. Yeah.
I love how the first thing and the most important thing that you said was to be present. I think, well, for me, and I can just speak for myself, as a single mom, I struggle with that a lot, being present, because there's so many things that you have to do. You have to keep the lights on, you have to work, you have to do this, you have to do that. So sometimes being present is a difficult thing to do. So with everything that we have to face in our world, what have you done to be present? Like what is your practice? And what advice would you give to and maybe not even a single parent, because I think that parents in general can deal with this, and you seem to really have a good hold on being present. So what advice would you give?
That's a heavy question there, Charmaine. Let's see if I can uneducatedly answer this question, right?
Or just just speak
Yeah.
from what you've done, your own experience.
Yeah. I think for me, you're right. You cannot be 100% all the time, right? But it's about learning about the times of, okay, if I handle this thing right here and I don't spend the time with my daughter right there, is that really going to change my life? Or can I handle this thing after that and do what's in my heart to go spend some time with her right now? And will it still be okay? And I think it's just it all depends on your own personal situation. So it goes back to the beginning of the commitment. I
Yeah.
think you need to commit to this idea of I'm going to be there for you. And I want to do that because it helps a little bit if you were a child and sometimes you felt like your parents or somebody wasn't present, maybe a father or a mother or somebody. It's like, man, he's never there. He's not in
Mm-hmm.
my baseball games. He doesn't come to my whatever, right? And so
Right.
later on in life, you have the choice to either repeat
Do
that and
that.
be just
Yeah.
like that, or you can adapt and change. And so some of that is that for me, to
Yeah.
where it's like I kind of wished for some things as a kid. And so best advice I think is just commit and then do the best you can. You're not going to be somebody else. If you're hearing me say these things and you think, well, I'm going to do just everything that Jeffrey does, that might not
It's
work
not
for
going to
you.
work.
You know, you have to just say, here's my life. Here's Charmaine. Here's the responsibilities I have for me. Or Jeffrey, here's the things you have. But in that group of responsibilities, the kid's got to be in there too, in my opinion. And so whether it's a few minutes, and a lot of it's the God aspect, you feel those promptings in you. Says, go hang out with her for a little bit.
Yeah.
Just go just for a little bit. Just hang out with her. And some of it also is talking after school. When I pick her up from school, tell me something about your day. What did you learn today? What happened today? Tell me about, who did you talk to? What's going on? There's time for a lot of things. There's 24 hours in the day. And if you think like, I watch my shows and this, that, and the third, well, if you've got time for that, then you got to kind of look at yourself and say, maybe I can miss a little bit of that. And I don't know. I don't want to condemn anybody, but I think it's just a thing where
just making the commitment.
you got to
I
do
think
it.
that's what it boils down to, is just making the commitment. I love that. I love your relationship with your daughter. And I love how early on you made that commitment, which I think for some people it's difficult to do. So I commend you for that. I commend you for taking the challenge to raise your daughter on your own. And I mean, it speaks volumes about the type of person that you are, and who you are. And I know you are going to make a huge impact on her life. So you talked about, making a change from some of the things that you had to deal with, to maybe change that trajectory so that you don't experience that same thing, or so that your kid doesn't feel that. So in doing so, you're going to make an impact in her life. So I commend you for that. And thank you for sharing, some of your personal story. But I think that's all in part of building those relationships. People need to be able to peel back the layers and understand who Jeffrey is as a whole. Yeah, you're this business person. Yes, this is what you do for a living, but this is who you are. And sometimes I don't think that we have the opportunity to see people for who they are. You see people surface level, and you wouldn't even imagine or think that, that these people are going through what they're going through, because you see our representative.
Yeah. Well, I want to set the bar high, for my daughter, right? I want it to be one of those things of like, being an independent woman is very important to me. Being someone who can sustain herself, even if in life maybe that isn't what happens, the ability to do it and the confidence to do it is very important to me.
It
And
is.
so that's, as far as that goes, like that's a lot of my life's mission, is not just be the best me I can be, but within this little being that God just blessed me with to have the responsibility to help raise, let's make something of this, right? Like let's do something better. I want my daughter to take her life to a level above my level, right? I'm not
Absolutely.
right. So
Yeah,
it's really
absolutely.
important to me for her to have that deep down deal of like, I am capable. I am a strong woman. And my mother showed me a lot of that stuff. She showed me
Absolutely.
this independent woman. She showed me like, man, like when I was a kid, I know we're probably running out of time, but whenever I was young and, they used to make you write these standardized tests and you had to write a paper. I used to write about my mom almost every time.
Yeah.
I would just write because it just blew me away as a single parent herself of 4 kids. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, I'm going to become a realtor. And I remember the day she asked me, what do you think, Jeff? And I said, you can do it. You can do it. You can do it. I didn't know what being a realtor even meant. I knew nothing.
Yeah.
I was, like 6, 7 years old or whatever, but I was like, you can do it. And she did it. And it's just awesome. It's just one of those things where that's one thing I love about working in this industry, because there's so many strong women in this industry. And I love that. I mean, there's strong men too, but obviously there's a lot of female real estate agents. And I just really love and appreciate and respect them for what they do, because I think that life is so tricky for a lot of ladies when it comes to doing something like this, being self-employed and
Yeah.
actually being a successful realtor. Is one thing to get your license. It's another thing to actually be successful. It's not easy.
Pay
It's
the
not
bills.
easy.
Right.
You know?
Well, I don't want to cut you off. This has been awesome. I do want to give you an opportunity to share your contact information with our audience before we wrap up. And we're at a minute.
Yeah, perfect. So I think the easiest thing is just get my number. You can definitely email me, but call me is best way. So 469-336-0321. Simple. Just call me.
All right, Jeffrey, this was amazing. Thank you so much for joining me today. And I'm looking forward to continuing to cultivate our relationship. Wish you all the best and wishing you an amazing 2022.
Thank you,
Talk to you
ma'am.
soon.
Bye.